Jean-Luc said, eat the rich.
He literally said, eat the rich.
Eat the rich. Welcome back to What Did We Just Watch? The show where we watch movies so bad,
so avant-garde,
or so mind-boggling, we have to ask ourselves, what did we just watch?
On today's episode, we are covering an art house movie. Every episode, we're going to alternate between one of Bellamy's picks and one of my picks. Bellamy will be picking the so absurdly bad, they're fascinating movies, and I will be picking the strange, opaque art house classics. So for today's episode, who better to start with for our art house movies than Jean-Luc Godard himself, and we went with 1967's Weekend. Weekend was written and directed by Jean-Luc Godard, as just mentioned. We'll get more into him in a little bit. And there are really only two main characters. IMDb lists three, so I'll talk about all three of them. But really the two main people you need to know are Corinne and Roland, who are a bourgeoisie married couple. Corinne is played by, pardon my French pronunciation, Muriel Darc, who I didn't really recognize anything from her filmography when I looked her up, but not to define a woman by the man she was in a relationship with, but she was a longtime partner of Alain Delon, so, you know. And Roland is played by John Yan. I knew that was gonna get you. Every time I think of it, I think of Jean Dundon.
Yes, icon.
Who I know a lot more about because he's kind of sexy. Anyway, so he's in probably most famously Les Bouchers and This Man Must Die, the two Chabrol movies. But he was also a comedian, director, and actor. Directed a couple of his own satires on bourgeoisie life. And released comedy songs billed under Johnny Rockefeller. And as the chief of the Liberation Front, which I assume is, we'll get into it, the cannibals. There's Jean-Pierre Calfon, who I recognized nothing he was in, but I wrote down two movie names I found funny, which were My Name Is and
okay,
and Jesuit Joe. The only interesting fact I was able to kind of get off of IMDb was that Premiere, which I assume is a magazine or publication, voted this one of the most dangerous movies, one of the 25 most dangerous movies, which, I mean, it's a movie. How do we define dangerous in this context?
Yeah, like the characters partake in dangerous behavior. I don't think anyone's watching this movie going, let me try eating people.
No. So I just thought that was interesting and a little bit strange. Some other cast members, there's a bunch of cast members, and I assume that a lot of them were notable French names, but I don't know enough about French cinema of the time period.
Because we're Americans in the year 2020.
Yeah. But I know that Jean-Luc's wife of the time is in the movie, and also the guy who plays Antoine in the 400 Blows Truffaut movies is also in the film, so if you recognize them, you can look out for them. I don't know what either of them look like. What is your experience with Jean-Luc Godard, Bellamy?
I don't know him.
This was her first Jean-Luc Godard movie.
What's your experience?
Well, let's get into it. So, I have a very fraught relationship with Jean-Luc Godard because sometimes I really like his movies and sometimes I don't. And I think this is a pretty common experience for most people who watch Jean-Luc Godard. I watched Pierre Le Fou, that was my first one of his in December. Hated it. Trash. Watched Un Femme est une Femme. Loved it. Wonderful. Watched, what was next? Contempt, trash, hated it. What was next? Vive sa vie, fine. Alphaville, fine, kind of boring. Band apart, great. I liked that one a lot. Passion, trash, hated it. So that brings us to Weekend.
Well, let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about the plot first.
The plot. I mean, it's a Godard movie. The plot is a series of events occurring.
A series of unfortunate events.
That's
in
true.
this case. So it opens up. There's
Oh God.
people vibing, and there's a little fender bender, and
Yeah.
they get in a fight, and that's the first scene.
Yeah.
And then there's just an extended scene where Corinne and Roland.
I don't think it was Roland.
Well,
I think it was just some guy.
who knows? They were sitting in the shadows, so it was impossible to tell who it was. Just talking about a threesome she had or maybe dreamt about.
Yeah. It involved eggs.
Extended scene.
Yeah, it was about 10 minutes long. There was very loud music the entire time.
Yeah, if you were like French and watching this without subtitles or captions, you'd just be going, well, what they say?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Which I know, like, Godard likes to do stuff like that. I know what's the point. So, like, that didn't really bother me. It was just very strange.
Yeah, it was a choice.
It was a choice. And in some ways, it's kind of like the things I don't like about Godard movies. Like, took itself really seriously. The music was really loud. I had no context. And it was just horny in, like, the Jean-Luc Godard way. No offense to Jean-Luc Godard, but also, like... So I was worried with that first scene.
Yeah, but then it goes and they're on a little road trip. They're trying
Roland and Corinne.
Yeah, so they're trying to get to this city, her hometown or whatever, where her dad is dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, to see her dad die.
Yeah, it seems they have been poisoning him. That is an implication. And he's like, the dad is like a rich bourgeoisie, like hotel owner, I think.
They're driving through all this traffic. People are dead on the side of the road.
There's just like a bunch of car accidents, people yelling, a lot of blood everywhere. And this is a very long scene, really just following Corinne and Roland as they're like driving past all the carnage and the like destruction of property, specifically cars, and human bodies being like secondary to the destruction of property becomes like a major, I would say, motif.
Yeah, totally.
Not a theme.
No, motif.
Motif, yeah.
Well, we'll talk about themes later, because Jean-Luc wants to talk about themes.
He does.
Like Zoe said, the plot is very just, things are happening. So, like, they are stopped in a city, a little town, and this young woman drives into a tractor, killing her passenger, but she's more worried about the car.
Yeah, it's a fancy car. She's like a rich bitch from the city, and she's, you know, screaming at the tractor driver for being like a small town hick.
The couple themselves get into a car crash,
Yeah.
and she yells, "My Hermes handbag!"
Yeah.
And so they're on the side of the road trying to look for transportation, and we come across this man in a fabulous outfit in a phone booth, just singing.
Ça nous fait 4 unités.
Alors vous voyez, oui.
Chaque mot nous est compté. J'appelle sans relâche, réponds-moi, dis que s'est-il passé? Qu'est-ce que toi me cache ce soir, avec qui vas-tu danser?
Yeah, and like, he's giving a performance. It's beautiful.
Yeah, he has a beautiful voice, and he's just singing what he wants to say.
Yeah, and then Corinne and Roland try and steal his car.
Beat him up.
Yeah, they get in a fist fight, and then Well, they steal his sweater.
They do, and Corinne, for the most part, wears the sweater for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
After that, they meet Emily Bronte, and that's a whole thing. I didn't particularly grasp onto that scene.
No, I don't know what the point.
No. So we'll move on.
And then they get picked up by a truck.
A pianist.
Yeah, a pianist, because he needs help with his concert. So there's just an extended scene of him playing the piano.
Yeah.
And then we get to the garbage truck.
The garbage men.
Yeah, so they get picked up in a garbage truck because they asked and they're going to the city where her dad was. And at this point, they're like, well, my dad's probably dead at this point. My mom's going to be pissed that we weren't there.
Yeah.
And so they're loading in some trash, asking for some of their sandwich. And then
the two garbage men look directly at the camera, and then the other garbage man speaks for them. So like when one of them is Arab and one of them is black, and so when the Arab garbage man is looking at the camera, he says like, my black brother will now speak for me, and then his like friend speaks for him, but it's like his face, and then they do vice versa.
yeah, and so they just talk about like basically the class struggle and rising up against
imperialism, racism, class oppression.
Yeah, it's very
like, let's be clear, we don't disagree with any.
No, like one of the things he says is about how like black people should be allowed to use the same methods to gain their freedom that everyone else did, and like yes, we agree with those things, but why was there just it was like someone's essay just got
edited
into
the movie.
Yeah. And it went on for a while.
It was a good like 5, maybe even like 7 minutes of just Jean-Luc Godard talking right to me. And eventually it shifts into more talking about class oppression, which is when he's just telling us the thesis of the movie.
Yeah.
And we're like an hour in at this point.
No, we're like almost an hour and a half in, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, it's over an hour in.
So like, we got it.
We get it. After that, they hop off the truck and
they're in Oinville.
Yeah, and so the dad has died and the mom is like, well, I don't want to split the money with you 50-50 anymore because you weren't here.
Yeah.
And so Roland is just like, please give us a little bit of money.
Yeah, he's like 80-20, and she's like, not even that.
He's like 90-10. He's like, no. And so they murder her mom.
Yeah, they take matters into their own hands and they stab her.
Yeah, and then they stage like a plane crash and set it on fire as to not arouse any suspicion of the cause of her death, so they can get all of the dad's money.
Yeah, so it's unclear if they have gone on a picnic with people or have stumbled upon it, but the next time we see them, they're relaxing at a picnic outside on the side of the road when cannibalism.
Yeah, they get kidnapped.
They get kidnapped by
people in fabulous outfits.
Oh, incredible outfits.
Just a lot of bright colors, a lot of layers, yes. There's like a little man with a brooch on his tie.
A feather boa.
There's someone in Willy Wonka cosplay, the Johnny Depp version.
Of course. So they get kidnapped by, they seem like they're like kind of hippie radicals, but they also eat people.
Yeah.
So they eat somebody, and then they kill Roland.
Yeah, he gets a slingshot rock to the head.
To the temple.
And he's dead. Oh, and then he says the only way to overcome the violence of the bourgeoisie is more violence.
Yeah.
He really just once again wanted to hammer home that thesis statement.
Yeah, which we got it. We're gonna get into it. Don't worry.
And then there's like a little shootout at the end.
Yeah.
And then it's the final scene is Corinne and the leader of the cannibals.
Yeah.
And they're eating dinner.
Which is Pig, a little bit of English tourist, and we find out a little bit of her husband. And she says, cool.
I'll have some more later.
Yeah.
And then feed.
I guess like the main thing to take away is like, obviously, you know, the horror of the bourgeoisie can only be combated with more horror. But even before like it actively gets violent against them, there's sort of the emphasis on consumerism. From the get, you're hearing a bunch of brand names when Corinne is telling her like story of the threesome to somebody. She asks like, oh, do you have American cigarettes? He's like, no, I only have this brand. She's like, I hate this brand. At one point we see like a giant like Shell logo. When they get into the car crash, which is a very bloody car crash, she's like, oh no, my Hermes handbag.
Oh, is that how it's pronounced?
I mean, I'm probably saying it wrong too.
Yeah, I don't speak French.
No.
Sorry, I don't speak Italian.
Yeah, so just like brand names and consumerism is a major theme. There's an emphasis on clothing throughout, with the couple stealing clothes off of dead people who've gotten into car crashes.
Yeah, they like happen upon like one of the car crashes. She's like, ooh, those pants, and just literally steals them off a dead body.
Yeah, he takes a jacket off of somebody, which again is interesting, contrasted against like all of the really cool fashion in the movie. Like there's, you know, the contrast of like legitimately it being like visually enjoyable to look at, and also like what's the exploitation behind this.
So the car crashes are like introduced right at the beginning, that like people are getting into accidents.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we as the audience see how horrific and like bloody and like tragic it is, just in the sense like there's all these dead bodies spilled across the road, but from the perspective of the characters it's just like brushed over.
Yeah.
It's not, when they're going through like this long line of traffic and you find out it's because like there's this big car accident, their only goal is to get past it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So they can go get her dead father's money. And even when they experience like a car crash and like something traumatic themselves, it's just another obstacle. It's not, it's not real to them.
The ultimate goal is to get the money, and it doesn't matter what gets in their way of that.
No.
There's kind of the whole idea of like, you know, you can't take it with you towards the end of the movie. The part where the cannibals come and kidnap them and then eventually kill Roland really reminded me a lot of Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man Is Hard to Find. They share the theme of like, you can be shitty and just be, you know, an asshole going through life, and then it can just end right like that, and it won't have meant anything to anybody. And that's really kind of what happens, especially because, you know, Roland dies, whereas Corinne doesn't. So, like, especially with Roland, where he never learns anything. He's just like a bourgeoisie, like, dick at the beginning, and he's a bourgeoisie dick until the very end.
Yeah, and kind of contrasting, like, their clothing, like, Corinne is constantly taking on and putting people's clothing, and he, for an extended amount of time, is just wearing like his original suit and his like white button-down shirt that's like soaked in blood.
Yeah.
And he stays that way for a while.
I feel like, side notes, like there's some animal abuse in this movie that's gross.
Yeah, I had to cover the screen.
Yeah. There's, you know, Godard's classic, like, occasional film references, Battleship Potemkin,
The Searchers,
Johnny Guitar, stuff like that. Which is, I mean, this is better than other movies where he, like, really hits you over the head with it. It was just kind of cute.
Yeah, they were, like, code names.
Yeah, for the cannibals.
Yeah. Yeah, so I enjoyed watching this movie. Like we talked about, there's some really funny moments. There was a lot of great outfits. I thought it was... some of the parts were just boring.
Yeah.
It was just extended, like the Emily Bronte stuff and the garbage men. It was just kind of like, what's happening? Why is this still happening?
Yeah, I definitely think like the parts of it are greater than like the whole. But this is like a Godard I felt more positively about overall than, I mean, others, but also I hate others. I like when Godard gets playful. I thought the comedy of this was legitimately like really funny, really absurd, like black comedy, and that was great.
We were chuckling.
Yeah, we laughed really hard at a lot of the different jokes and like visuals. And I think like Godard never is particularly interested in like exploring his characters' like inner worlds, which I mean obviously inherently is fine, but sometimes can be frustrating, particularly in something like Alphaville, where I really wanted to get inside of the characters' minds more. But for something like this, where you've got kind of two like loathsome people kind of just moving from point A to point B, it didn't feel necessary. And I think actually like was like a good use of his like kind of distance he keeps us from his characters.
Yeah. They're not, you're never asked to really sympathize with them.
No.
Which is good, because they're terrible, terrible people.
They're bad.
Yeah, they're murderers.
They're murderers. I feel like I kind of thought I was going to be throwing you into the deep end with this one as your first Godard.
But it wasn't that bad.
No.
I came into this movie trying not to read anything about it, because I mean I think it just is better that way. But when I was adding it to my watch list, I accidentally saw the word cannibals in the description. So I thought there was going to be more of that early on. So it was just us going, where's the cannibalism? Oh,
here it is.
There it is.
And it was there. We thought for a while, because we got like an hour and 14 minutes in, and we were like, is it metaphorical cannibalism?
Yeah, did I just miss an important word? But no, it was cannibalism.
It's the real deal.
Yeah.
So, I think, what would you give this out of 5 stars?
I'm going to ask you first.
I'm like sitting pretty between a 3 and a 3.5.
Okay, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Even though there were parts that were boring and I was like, you can cut this, there was never a part where I was like, it was insufferable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, God, I want to turn it off.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was fun.
It was fun. It was funny. It was playful. It was experimental without feeling like frustrating to watch. Yeah, it was. I thought that the like acting was fine.
Yeah. I
mean, it wasn't a lot required, but
no, there was nothing like of note.
No. Yeah, it was, and it's got his trademark blue, red, and white. Huh?
Wait. Would you recommend watching this movie?
I would recommend watching this. I think that it's maybe, you would have to speak to this, but I feel like it's a little bit better if you've gone into Godard's filmography, at least a little bit. But, playful Godard is just, like, fun. I liked it.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. You can watch it on Criterion Channel or Canopy right now.
Yeah.
We were talking about this. I would recommend watching it with someone.
Yes.
A lot of the things that are, like, absurd and funny would be a lot more fun experiencing it with another person.
Yeah. And since there are like the occasional scene that is pretty boring, especially that first scene, like if you can get through the first scene, you're gonna be totally fine.
You're right, okay.
But like, you might need somebody else's like energy to bounce off of when you get a little bit bored in a scene that's not quite for you.
So that was Weekend.
That was Weekend. On the weekend.
Yeah.
So Bellamy is choosing our next movie, and I don't know what it is yet. I wanted her to tell me on camera.
Yeah, so our next review, which will be up at some point in time.
Next week? Maybe?
We make no promises.
She makes no promises.
I make no promises. Yeah, as the one who edits these videos, I make no promises. So next time we'll be reviewing the 2018 film, Little Italy. Thank you for joining us. This has been What Did We Just Watch?
One of my notes is just, can you see that? It's just the word frog.